I'm Molly Kimball. Welcome to Fueled, a wellness and nutrition podcast. I'm a registered dietitian and nutrition journalist with a passion to help people live their strongest, healthiest life possible. In my weekly TV segments and columns, there's a limited amount of time and space to cover everything, but there's so much more to share. This podcast is my opportunity to dive deeper into the topics you want to know about. Welcome, everyone. We are joined by a very special guest today, Thomas Morstead. He is a punter and kickoff specialist for the New Orleans Saints. He's 33, 6'4", and a 225-pound NFL player, but how he lives his life, how he trains, and his philosophy towards wellness and nutrition, it's really something that we can all learn from. He's a big believer, as am I, in that in order to achieve true success in whatever it is that we're striving to achieve, whether it's related to wellness, sports performance, our careers, or our relationships, it's essential that our goals aligned with our priorities. Too often, we let the pressures, that noise that swirls around us, gets into our heads, weighs us down, gets the best of us, and quite frankly, prevents us from succeeding and truly dialing into our deepest strengths. Thomas shares his insights and his strategies with us, what he's found that works to help him turn down this noise and focus on the process of achieving his goals without fear of the result. We also talk about his typical days during the season, his approach when it comes to caffeine and alcohol especially, and his passion to live his best life to help others thrive. This inspires me, and I think you'll love it too. So welcome, Thomas. I'm excited to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Molly.
So in talking with you, I know that part of your passion is helping others thrive in all aspects of their lives. So not just performance or sports, but what you do as an NFL player, your lifestyle, your diet, your emphasis is that this is good for all of us and that it's really what you would be doing even if you weren't in the league.
Just as a player that's now been on this team for a decade, I remember as a young player trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to stick around? Well, you go look at guys that have been around for 10 years. Why are they still here? And you see some of the habits that those guys have. You know, if you wanted to go kidnap a few of our players, I'm not going to name any names, it'd be the easiest thing in the world because every day at this time, they're at this.
Right.
Every day they're at this time. They're so regimented. They are 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365, maybe 360. All in, all the time, right? Everybody goes on a vacation or takes a day off here or there, but these guys are so regimented. And again, that gets to some people are not capable of that. It's just not a priority, right? And that's okay. But it's being honest with what gains you want to make, and you know what you're willing to give up to do those things. You know, the level of the blinders on, I think, which is that's kind of. I have that wiring a little bit already. You can ask my wife for good or bad. But the blinders get put on. And if you can, essentially you're saturated in the process of what you're doing and you have no fear of results, whether it's negative or positive. You are just, all you see is what is the process, what's the next step. And, our QB, Drew Brees, if there's one thing I can remember saying over and over and over throughout the years of being on his team, is if you focus on the process, the results take care of themselves. And that is so true.
So you and I have talked a lot about the psychological aspect of your job and the mental aspects, and you've developed a really specific way of dealing with those mental pressures that are always there and the very real physical reactions to the stressors that we also all experience. And it's been really effective for you, and it's really something that we can all learn from and incorporate into our own lives.
As we get closer to the game, the anxiety starts to come in, or maybe it's the fight or flight, however you think about that, that, your adrenal gland starts pumping out some stuff to go perform on the day. And so once that starts happening, that's kind of why you get that sick feeling. And, as a young player, I hated that feeling because I didn't know what it was there for. And once I looked at it in more of a positive light, my body's preparing to do something special. And so a lot of times you're not hungry with that. You kind of have that pit in your stomach. My heart rate throughout the game day looks like I ran a marathon, which is crazy because people probably think I don't do anything. And so, but that's more the emotional edge to the game of kind of staying on the edge of this cliff without falling off, but being ready to, make that jump at any time when called upon. Because there's some games where, like twice this last season, I didn't punt, and then there's other games where we punt 6 or 7 times, and so you never know as a specialist, but you always have to be ready.
Really cool that you used to dread it and now you not only expect it, but you kind of embrace it and look forward to it.
Well, once you
Yeah.
realize what it is, that's the big thing, right? Because it was a negative feeling, and it had been the reason for some negative performance, right? And I read a great book years ago called Mind Gym, and it was kind of the mental side of sports or performance, I guess you could say. And I remember vividly this chapter basically saying, "Hey, this is a positive thing. This is you preparing to do something special. Your body is preparing to do something um, different than what you would be able to do on a normal day when you're just by yourself." And once you look at it in that sort of mindset of, wow, my body is preparing for this special performance, that just breeds confidence.
I think that that's something that I had never even thought of it that way. And I love it because I think even our listeners, okay, are we out, on the field in front of hundreds of thousands of people watching us and all eyes on us? No, most of us aren't. But the things that we're doing in our daily lives, we have that feeling a lot of times. And I think so many times we run from it or that causes us such stress. And then we're doing other things to numb that stress and kind of
Sure.
turn that down.
And just to like go a little deeper into that, for me personally, I've always been the type of person to unearth every rock. Like I'm gonna turn over every stone in preparation. And so it allows you to have the freedom to have the confidence because you feel in your mind that you've done everything in preparation. You didn't skip that cold tub session. You didn't, you didn't cheat on just, you felt like you wanted that coffee that morning. You did all the steps that you knew were going to put you in the best position to succeed. And so I think that's a big part of that too, is that gives you the confidence that it's almost not up to you. Like you've done everything possible to be ready to perform. And so you can live with whatever the results are. And sometimes I think on the flip side, some people have not done everything they need to do for whatever they're having anxiety about. And that can lead to the anxiety because they know deep down, if they look themselves in the mirror, they haven't done everything they were supposed to do to be prepared for whatever. Maybe it's a presentation in front of their boss or, something like that. Is if you've done everything, then I think having that mindset of, okay, I've turned every rock over. I've done all the prep. I've gone over my speech, whatever it is. Then the confidence to say, hey, my body's preparing to be totally locked in here and to do my best performance.
And I think it goes back a lot to really being tuned in, dialed in. And I think what you just said too, you've said to me before about, we have these goals, but do our goals truly align with our priorities? And so we say something's important. We say that we want something, but then what are we actually filling our time and our days with? And so I think to that point, whether it's preparation, if someone's, when we think about preparation, we could think preparation for work. We could think about preparation for an athletic event. If someone's doing a race, even, a 5K, a 10K, an Ironman type race. But I think also preparation when someone says, I hear it a lot, that they want to lose weight. They put that as a goal, but it isn't a priority. So I think, those things kind of having that confidence that you've had that put that preparation time in and put your work in. It's not always easy for us to say we have.
And it's about being honest with yourself, right? It's like when I work with a lot of kickers and punters every year through Cole's kicking camps. And I'll never forget 15 years ago, Jamie Cole's the founder. He's my best friend. He's my oldest son's godfather. He was at our house yesterday, and we were just reminiscing about 15 years ago at this camp, him giving me this speech. There were other kids in the room, but I felt like he was staring at me, talking directly to me. And he talked about your goals and priorities matching up. And if your goal is to be an all-state kicker or make your varsity team, and you're out partying late or you're not keeping your grades up so that you can't perform, maybe you're being a knucklehead, maybe you're just young and you need a little bit of encouragement. But once that only goes so far. I think needing somebody to motivate you is a load of crap, right? You need to be honest with yourself about what is a priority. And it's okay. If it's not a priority, like that's fine.
I
you
think
know?
we can alleviate so much stress that we put on ourselves if we identify what those priorities are and what our real goals are,
Absolutely.
because
But
there's so much failure around it.
yes, you have to be honest with yourself about what's important to you and why it's important to you. And it doesn't have to be about you, right? I've seen a lot of people that have turned their life around in different areas because of a child that they had, and now they felt like this is what turned it on for them. Everybody's different, but it's being honest with yourself, looking yourself in the mirror and having those conversations with yourself, because it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks.
I
It
think
really
that
doesn't.
so many times that sense of failure and the why don't I have the willpower? Why can't I get it together? Why am I not doing these things? People, we can beat ourselves up so easily.
Well, the first time I thought I could play in the NFL, I wasn't even on scholarship and I wasn't starting at my college, but I thought I was good enough. I thought I had the talent, and I knew that I was still super rough. Like there were so many things that I could improve at. And, um, and I gave up. I made the decision to give up a lot of the other things that not only didn't equate to me getting to that goal, but maybe would be counter to me getting to that goal, whether it was staying out late and going to different parties and things. I still enjoyed myself here and there, but I definitely felt as if I sacrificed a lot of those experiences. But that's because it was a priority to me. And I
Exactly.
wanted to
Right.
have the shot at it.
Right.
And I didn't want to be one of those guys that said, "Oh, I could have done that," or "Man, if I'd have done that." Well, why didn't you?
Right.
You didn't,
And I
right?
think that's what people look at. And, people use the word lucky, and most successful people, there's very little luck involved.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's the people that I find that are the most successful, as a general rule, they put all the accountability on themselves. They make decisions to be their best and to overcome whatever it is. They don't make excuses. It doesn't mean that there aren't legitimate excuses, but it's never a reason. The accountability falls on themselves. And I think, um, I think it's rarer and rarer to find that.
I agree. And I
And
think so many times people they wear it on their sleeve. They wear their butt, their excuse or whatever it might be is, yeah, but I had this. Well, everybody's got these things going on, and it's how do we deal with these things, and how much do we let them either drive us or kind of rise to the top, or do we just kind of push them to the side and keep moving forward?
right. And I think it just gets back to an accountability. Look, I wasn't the stud athlete going through high school. I was a backup my senior year of high school. Like,
I
people don't even think about that
I think that
stuff,
is fantastic for people to hear, because
Yeah.
again, people say, "Oh, what a cool job, what a cool profession. He's lucky to do this." I
And
think
those are all true. Absolutely, they are. But maybe one day I'll write a book on all of my experiences and things that were um, challenges or obstacles where you'd have said, "How the heck did he get there?" Right? And I do believe it's through having very supportive parents that were there for me all the time. Wasn't ever forced into anything, and they kind of let me find my way, find my niche. And I was very lucky to find something that I loved doing at an early age that I happened to be fairly good at,
right.
and not everybody's that lucky. So yes, there is
Yeah.
some luck involved. Absolutely.
So whenever kind of on that same note, when we're talking about, football being that team sport, but as a punter, all eyes are on you for that moment. I think something that all of us, I know I do deal with, is the noise that swirls in our head about whatever we have going on in our lives. We might feel overwhelmed. We might feel that we're not doing something good enough, or, we have all the what ifs that can go in. So what's your kind of either advice or your experience that you can say for how do you turn down that noise, and what's some takeaways that someone who's listening can put into their own life?
Well, I think there's a lot of ways to answer that question. I would say if I could boil it down to one thing, I think I'm an eternal optimist, unrationally positive at times. I just feel like it's going to work out. I don't know why that is.
And it's hard to bottle that up for people.
Well, some people have not been raised that way,
Right.
and they haven't had that. That hasn't been wired into them. Some people are very pessimistic, and I have a few friends that are very pessimistic, and I love them, and it's worked for them, right? It's not for me, but I don't know that there's a right way, but I do think that just having that glass is always full, it's half full, not half empty. That type of mentality, it's almost irrational at times, and it doesn't make sense, but it's kind of an eternal optimism. And I think part of that's just grounded in maybe my faith and my values and things that I believe in. And not everybody has that foundation, right? And that's just that has worked very well for me.
Do you try to dial it back when you're out there on the field?
No.
You embrace it.
Yeah. So I remember my rookie year, we went to the playoffs all the way, won the Super Bowl. And I remember there were some of those games we talked about where it was dead. I didn't have the juices going. And I, deal with the anxiety of all of a sudden not having that and knowing that I'm not at my best right now. I don't have it going. And my grandfather, who didn't like to travel, still doesn't. I convinced him to come over to watch me play from Houston area. And they drove over. And I will never forget, it was almost to the end of the first quarter. We were beating the Cardinals pretty good. And I'd already kicked off a bunch of times. I just couldn't find him in the crowd. And I found him, and hands were up, cheering for me. And I just remember almost like crying in the moment. And then I had to go kick off, and I smashed this touchback out the back. And I just had this epiphany in that moment that I was so emotionally charged that it carried everything, right? So whether it's a positive emotion or a negative, maybe I'm angry. When your mind gets out of the way and you can just be emotional, for me, I was still able to, that got the best out of me. And so I need to be charged. So some coaches, they cuss guys out and they kind of just crater, right? For me, like, if I'm being honest, that did great for me. I don't like it. Maybe it got me really mad, emotionally charged. Any of those things that can kind of get a visceral emotional response. Could be something that's sad or super joyous.
That's really important for people to be aware of, because I think when it isn't something that we perceive as a positive, we want to numb it out. And I think that's why they overeat, that hand to mouth into the bag of, cookies or ice cream or chips. It's why people drink. It's why people do so many of the things they do, is to turn down that noise and to try to numb it out, when
I like to embrace whatever the feels are. I think that's part of living. So right? It could be bad, it could be sad, or it doesn't have to be a positive thing in your mind. But I think you need to learn to, whatever you're feeling, it's okay. You can't help how you feel, right?
Embrace the feels.
Embrace the feels, right? And so I know that sounds really corny, but
well, it's. I'm not thinking corny. I'm thinking it sounds very scary for people.
Yeah. Well, look, I think it's like doing anything. If you can convince yourself to just try it and give yourself a chance to see if it works for you or is helpful. It doesn't mean it's always an enjoyable experience. It's uncomfortable. But if it's something that helps you in your life, then isn't it worth doing? Right? I mean,
yes.
But you have to do that, right? You have to, and maybe it's not something you need, and that's okay too, right? But for me, it really helped. And so I keep notebooks. I've got them right here, journals. I've got 11 years of journals now of all my
he's reaching into his backpack, and he has plural of notebooks in there.
Well, you go back and you look at work at certain times when you were doing well. Maybe you're dealing with an injury. What did you change up? Could be nutritionally what you're doing, goals that I'm setting for the next off season. And I remember in my 2010 journal, after we won the Super Bowl, I wrote down how do I artificially increase adrenaline or that response? And that sounds so crazy to think of that, but I remember. And I have a book, and I don't know if I even have it in here right now, but basically it was, it said football is a game of emotion. And I just had pictures of people in this book that meant something to me in some manner. Maybe they gave something up for me. Maybe they sacrificed to help me get where I'm at. And getting into that, if I could essentially flip to this page of the book and look and just get this feeling, then I'd go out and mash the kickoff, right? And I could create that if I needed it. And I don't always need that, but sometimes you do.
And that's something that we can do in our own lives. I mean, I think every person, whether it's in your phone, you have this kind of resource. I've done that when I've given presentations that I'm really nervous about. I'll have a picture of my husband, or us somewhere that's enjoyable, and I'll have it kind of on the podium right in front of me, and I'll look at that, and it'll remind me, it's okay. Like, this is what I'm going back to.
And I think it helps you relax too. And sometimes it can be not just that, but it reminds you of your why.
Exactly. It reminds me of my why. It's the essence of what's important to me. It's what's in my core. It's why I do what I do. Okay, so shifting gears, let's talk about what so many people want to know about your nutrition and performance fueling. And I know that you're a big believer that what works for you may not be the end all be all. It's not for everybody, but you've kind of found a good system that works for you.
I think a lot of life is about balance and just making good choices throughout every single day. The mental side of this is so important, I think. And, somebody that starts that makes a decision that they're going to start running every day relative to somebody that says they're going to start walking every day. The people that start walking, they sustain longer than the people that start running. And so it's not about jumping off the deep end. Every now and then you find somebody that maybe overcomes a major emotional thing that's holding them back. But I think in the long run, to be successful, it's about making just small steps, small wins, and learning your own body and figuring out what works for you. And so I appreciate you saying that, because there is not a one size fits all for nutrition. Everybody's body is different. The way you process things can be different. And I think a lot of it is just learning to listen to yourself and gaining that experience of your connection to your own body.
But it's also, I think, hard for people to accept that, because the message of staying consistent, consistency is key. I am a firm believer in that. But when people think small steps, a lot of times they're not getting that immediate response or the immediate results that they look
Sure.
for. And so I think that's what we're always, as a registered dietitian, I feel like I'm always kind of pushing against that, is because that it's real, the popular sexy fad diets that get people's attention that people are talking about, those are pretty extreme. And when we're talking moderation, it's hard to say, but wait, this is also really effective. What are some of the biggest things that are kind of your takeaways? Like, you may bend them some, and like you said, you'll have the cookies sometimes. You're going to have these other things sometimes. But what are some of your core, like, nutritionally guiding principles?
Okay, well, alcohol, that's a tough one for a lot of people. And look, it was just St. Patrick's Day, and I marched in the parade uptown here, and I blew it out of the water pretty good. That's my birthday present every year, is my day to myself to go do that, and it's a lot of fun. And that's part of the balance of the year, right?
Right.
And Mardi Gras and St. Patrick's Day are kind of within a month and a half period every year, and so
it's a tough time in New Orleans here at that time of the year. It's a blast.
It's a perfect time for the off season for me,
yes,
right? To where I can kind of let loose and enjoy myself.
As dietitians, as nutritionists here, though, it's a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, it's okay to know that, hey, I'm gonna enjoy myself for a week or two here.
Completely.
Right? That's great. And it's knowing, hey, there's, for some people, to have that little light at the end of the tunnel, or light at the end of the week. I know a lot of people every weekend, they're going to go blow it out for 2 nights in a row every week. That's really hard to sustain that lifestyle if you have goals of health. Right. And so, but it's everything in moderation.
So typically alcohol is
typically during the season, I will have a drink after a win, but it's more of a social thing. Like, that's the best time to hang out with the guys.
Right.
No matter if you started or if you're on the bench, if you're practice squad, if you're all pro, or just trying to survive the roster that week, we were all winners.
Right.
And so it's the best time to get to know your teammates, because everybody's in a good mood. And so if we win, as a rule of thumb, I try to get out and go have a drink with the guys. But yeah, I try to stay away from alcohol. I think drinking your sugary drink, calories, whether it's sodas or Gatorades or anything like that, that's a thing that I think a lot of people could very easily cut out.
And coffee drinks, the sugary coffee drinks, I think people know, or they realize, okay, yeah, a Coke or Sprite or soft drink, sports drinks. Well, I think a lot of people don't realize sports drinks are as high sugar as they are, but the sugary coffee drinks can just be literally 3-4 days worth of added sugar in one drink. It is off the charts.
Everything I see at the grocery store, low fat, no fat. I can't stand that, because, that's a whole nother, you could go into hours of talking about that. But back in the 70s of basically saying we got to get fat out of our diet, because of,
And those were the decades that we exponentially became fatter.
Correct.
Right. So embracing especially plant-based fats.
Yes. I mean, I probably eat 2 avocados a day. And so, I think your body processes fats different than it does proteins and sugar, or protein and carbs. And so, I think you're meant to eat the right type of fats a lot.
Right. Okay. So tell me about game days. What does this look like nutritionally for you?
for me, I know once I'm done with breakfast, I'm probably not eating much the rest of the day. And so I find ways to kind of drink my calories. But it's not the way a lot of people drink their calories, which is a bunch of sugar. I think bone broth is a great thing for me to kind of sustain on. Um, and so, I'll actually have that, I can have that throughout a game or throughout practice as something to, you know, keep giving my body some fuel. But it's really not, you don't need the sugar and some of the sports drink stuff that a lot of people see. And so that's one of the ways that I get my calories throughout the game. And then, after my game's over, like late that night for the next 24 hours, I feel like I can't eat enough.
Right.
I'm just trying to replenish constantly.
So I love the bone broth because it's for those of you who aren't familiar, if you're hearing this, so bone broth, it's similar to just regular broth, but it's basically been long simmered, usually 18, 24 hours, and it actually pulls the collagen and the protein from bones. So you might have chicken bone broth or beef bone broth, but it is basically a protein rich broth, but it's also really high in electrolytes, the sodium as well that you would need for that. So that completely makes sense. Typically, though, you're day in, day out, low sugar,
Yep.
higher on the plant-based fats, protein whenever you're having protein, especially with the bone broth throughout the day.
Yep.
What about timing? Do you look at a certain number of hours each day, every few hours, or how do you look at the timing of
Yeah,
when you
look, during the season is totally different. I have kind of like two lives, in season, out of season. And, I know we've discussed a little bit about intermittent fasting, and I do think that's an awesome thing.
And for our listeners, we've actually done an entire podcast on intermittent fasting. You can find it in our lineup of episodes for the Fueled Wellness and Nutrition podcast.
So I have intertwined that a little bit into my off seasons. When I'm not doing a tremendous amount of volume, I'm still training very hard. But most mornings, that bone broth we talked about, I think the bone broth that I have is maybe 50 calories, and it's there's no sugar in it, right? It's just protein and a touch of fat, and that's been great for me. So that's a way to kind of, it's not truly intermittent fasting, but it's almost nothing. It's got a bunch of nutrients and electrolytes, and that's kind of my wake up to the morning.
And when we do intermittent fasting challenges or kind of guiding people through it, that's actually the one thing that we would say, if you feel like you need that extra something, bone broth is kind of our filler, our go-to. Have this in there. I love that.
Yeah, and so that's my way of doing it during the off season. And so I'll eat heavily from when I get home from workouts in the afternoon all the way through the evening, and I even eat pretty close before I go to bed.
Do you usually have a nighttime snack or like after dinner?
Yeah, I would just say very rarely do I eat dinner and I'm like full. But with the way I train and how much time I spend in the weight room.
Is that
or
nighttime
running,
snack usually healthy or not healthy?
I would, in my opinion, it's healthy.
Okay.
But I tend to drink or have, one of my favorite snacks is kind of a plant-based cereal with almond milk before bed. So there are quite a bit of carbs in it with the protein and the almond milk. But I would say it's a very balanced, calorically balanced thing to have before bed.
One of the things that I'll often guide people to do as a nighttime snack is just what you said, maybe if you are craving something like a cereal, but also adding a scoop of protein powder into that unsweetened almond milk to boost the protein. I like casein right before bed. Casein is really rich in cottage cheese, but not everyone loves that. But you can buy casein protein powder. So that I like. It's a slower digesting protein, and so having that before we go to bed is great. I think if someone is struggling to lose body fat, then we don't have them do cereal at night. I would have them go the other way. But for someone who's training like you are, I think that sounds fantastic.
Yeah, and I would just say, is through a personal experience, I think the trimmest I ever get, or of what people are aesthetically maybe looking for to trim up or lose weight or have a body fat issue, is working out first thing in the morning before you've had anything.
Right.
Drink some water and get going. Maybe have a little coffee or a little caffeine to get going, and go hit your workout immediately. Get the engine going and running.
So
then it's craving nutrition, and I think that can allow you. You look at some of the fittest people in the world, like, how can you eat that much food? Well, it's because they've they've got this system down for their own body. And I think when you can get up and get going, get moving immediately, first thing, it kind of it gets you going in the right direction for the rest of your day.
Absolutely. And so when you're looking at timing, the fasting exercise in that fasting state, there's a lot of science to support it. Now, obviously, if someone has diabetes, if they have issues like that, we're not saying don't eat before you exercise. That's going to be individual for everybody. But for most people who don't have issues like that, waking up, not feeling that pressure, because I think a lot of people think they have to eat breakfast right when they wake up. You don't. It's fine to just wake up, hit the gym, go for your run, go for your brisk walk, whatever that workout is. Our body is actually burning more fat as that source of fuel during that workout. Then we come back, get ready, get showered, and then eat, and then we start that replenishment process. And so I think that timing is fantastic, and it's what you found works for you as an athlete, but it's also things that are a takeaway for all of us who aren't on the field for our jobs.
Yeah, and I'm big on active recovery as well. So like, for me personally, working out hard at night or in the evenings, I feel like my soreness and some of the remnants of a really good workout, they stay longer. Like it takes them longer to get out of my system if I worked out, ate, and went to bed.
Okay.
And so for me, being able to work out first thing in the morning kind of just clears my mind, gets me on the right path mentally, but also now I'm having this, you've kind of got the fire up and going, and now it's just burning wood. And so I feel like nutritionally you're able to, refill immediately. And throughout the day, you're still moving. Even if you're in an office, you get up and every 30 minutes, hey, just go walk for 1 or 2 minutes, just move, just get the blood flowing. And if you can do that throughout the day, you're having that active recovery, and then you get your rest at the end of the night. And I feel like the next day you're kind of most ready to go have a great day again.
All right. So tell me about coffee, or more specifically caffeine, because you use this very strategically.
I use caffeine for performance on game day. But 2 years ago, I gave up the coffee, and that was hard. That was very hard, but it changed my life, honestly.
What way? How did you see it?
Well, I have the metrics on my monitor, my heart monitor here to show it to you. But when I stopped, I suffered from minor headaches for 2.5, 3 weeks, which I never would have thought I had any sort of. I know addiction is a sensitive word to use, but to some degree, probably felt like I needed it, and so I just stopped after listening to a sleep expert that Coach Peyton brought in, and.
So your main reason for giving up caffeine was to enhance your sleep.
Well, she said that would make a huge difference on my sleep, and sleep is a huge indicator for performance. And so, if A plus B equals C, that was the decision made. And so I just did it that day. I came home and I said, all right, I'm not going to do it. And, it did change my performance for sure, and my sleeping so much better. Not that I had an issue. But, essentially you're artificially raising your heart rate. And so if you're doing that daily.
And that half-life of caffeine, it stays in our system for so long. So even if we're having it in the morning through maybe early afternoon, there's still traces of it as we're trying to go to bed. So it definitely can interfere.
If your normal resting when you're sitting is 60 and you're on coffee for the morning and you're sitting at 80 for the whole morning, you're kind of unnecessarily working.
Exactly. And when we look at stress and its effect on our body, one of the big things is heart rate goes up, breathing rate goes up, blood pressure goes up, and we put ourselves in that fight or flight mode. And if we're having, that overstimulation of caffeine, we're sitting there at our desk at the keyboard, fight or flight mode, but we're not doing anything except sitting at our desk or our car.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so I still use caffeine Wednesday, Thursday, and game day for my practice, because I don't want to practice in a kind of a different feel than I would in a game. Like I don't want to just all of a sudden get to the game, throw caffeine in, and I'm shaky, or I'm not used to dealing with what it does for me, because there's no question that it elevates my performance, or it helps me be at my best place. And my sleep got better, my performance got better. There's so many things, and it's not just. The other part of that, apart from the rest, is that the effectiveness of the caffeine when you do use it and you're not overusing it, the jump in what you're gaining from that is strong. And so it was there was a bunch of factors that made a big difference in that.
And I think that there's a lot of people that are curious about supplements, curious about performance enhancing supplements, and caffeine is. We were getting into your typical day, but I know that there's a lot of questions about caffeine too. But caffeine is one of those that is the safest. It's legal, it's all these things that coffee in particular has a lot of antioxidants, a lot of other health benefits around it. So if there's something that someone is going to say, I'm going to put into my body to help increase my focus and my performance, caffeine would be, one of my top choices for them. And I think it's really interesting how you're doing it is almost by the book of what we would say is not overusing it. So your body's so conditioned to it so that when you do add that caffeine in, you are experiencing that focus that increase those performance benefits. How do you do the timing of caffeine in and around your training and game day?
So one of the big issues for any athlete, I think that especially that gets into that place of fight or flight, you start getting the adrenaline going. Some of these endorphins start getting released in your body to go do this special thing, whatever the job is. And, you can't stay there. You have to peak into that. You can't, it's not a place you can just stay at. Right. And so my caffeine is only for a workout or for a game. So that's it. I mean, literally that's a treat for me. Like if I'm on vacation or doing something, I'm going to have a latte when we go to breakfast or something, go to a special thing. But as a general daily rule, I'm not having any caffeine.
And I think especially people who do struggle with anxiety or things like that. One of the things I do is a TV segment each week. And my nature is not usually, my nature is more to be off to the side, but you kind of have to put yourself out there if you're doing something like live TV. I specifically won't have my coffee in the morning before the segment because the same kind of reaction of heightened performance when you're going into that fight or flight mode, I don't need that right before I'm going on live TV. It was causing too much of that. So I found
your body's already naturally giving that to you.
Exactly.
Whereas sometimes through the rigorous season, week after week after week of this high peak of central nervous system, sometimes it doesn't happen because it's so frequent. And so artificially creating that is part of the deal with that, and if I ever go into a game and I'm not feeling the butterflies and the kind of that pre-game anxiety or whatever you want to call it, that's a problem.
And when we're talking about nutrition, so we're looking at, cutting back the sugars, making sure you're adding in those plant-based fats. The nutrient timing is really important and has worked really well for you. So the Saints have a sports dietitian, Jamie Meeks, who's also a friend of mine. What's her influence with you guys, and how much does she guide these things for you? And how much does she talk with you about it?
So we have a great setup in our weight room. We have I think it's called the Fourth Down Cafe or something like that. And it's, when guys are in meetings, when they have a break, they come in, maybe they grab a bag of almonds or they grab a little protein bar. There is so much information that is sitting there for different guys. But really, I mean, I think the big value with Jamie is the one-on-one meeting with her, because some guys have a problem keeping their weight up. Some guys have a problem keeping their weight down to be at their best. And so everybody's issues are different. I don't think there are a lot of football players out there that if they stopped doing the sport today would just be how they are.
Right.
Most people are straining to get to one weight up or to keep it down. And she does a great job of helping guys understand how to get to their personal goal, or maybe it's the coach's goal. Hey, we need this player to be at this weight. And I think the real value is the one-on-one consultation. And honestly, as a team value, we just have so many more nutritional resources now. And so it's been great to have her, because that's literally what she's doing. She's planning out all our meals during the season, training camp, hotel food before the game, things like that. And that's just one aspect of our, of our preparation, but it's hugely important.
Consistency is so key in performance fueling. And I love that Jamie's role as sports dietitian for the Saints really makes it so easy for you guys to stay consistent no matter where you are. So takeaway for our listeners, even though most of us are not in the National Football League, we're not out on the field with millions of people watching our every move, we can still relate, even though the pressures and the stressors in our lives may be different, but many of the same strategies that can work for you also can work for us. So consistency, sticking with those things that work well for us, the things that benefit our whole body wellness. And on the flip side, what are the things that are working against us and how can we limit or minimize these in our lives?
The biggest thing is figure out your why. Why do you want to make the change? Is it really that important to you? And if it's not, that's okay. Be honest with yourself. But once you figure out your why, then I think it's so much easier to go out and set your goal. Because if you know that this really is that important to me and you're able to acknowledge that, then you can set your goal, right? And you can have a short-term, a medium, and a long-term goal. And guess what? Goals change all the time. It's okay to fail.
And giving yourself that permission.
Yes.
What a relief. Yeah.
It's okay. Like, let it happen, but give yourself a shot. It doesn't mean, I have trained myself to goal set for a long period of time. And so I literally have zero fear of, it's not about whether you succeed or fail. It's kind of putting yourself out there. Right.
And like you said, making sure that you've done everything that you needed to do to get yourself up to that point.
Yeah. And so I think getting comfortable, being uncomfortable, that's one of the big mantras of my life. Trying new things, constantly stretching yourself. And a lot of times that would be seen physically by what people see, but it's not just that, it's mentally and emotionally. But just figure out your why, and it's okay if you don't get to the place you wanted to get to. It's not about the result. Like, there's not some place of Mecca where
we're immediately happy.
Well, you're just happy and you've arrived. It's so much about the process and saturating yourself in the process and finding the small things to enjoy in that process that you look forward to. And I think if you can kind of get all of that, mashed together.
And looking at, fueling our bodies with balance, fueling our bodies with consistency. A big thing is not overcomplicating it. And then I think, as Thomas said, embracing the feel, whether that's something that is, thrilling to us or insanely anxiety provoking, just starting to really dial in and tune in and stop numbing ourselves out. So I'm super excited to have you on with the podcast. I'm very honored to have you with me. And I think that we'll probably have us back, hopefully, to talk even more, like
I would love it.
Seasons down, and we can talk more nutrition, wellness, and I think that mental wellness that really is an underlying factor in so much of our physical health as well. So, all right. Thank you, Thomas.
All right. Thank you.
I'm Molly Kimball, and you've been listening to Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, the podcast. You can follow Molly Kimball RD on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And if you haven't yet, subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Join us next week for another dose of Fueled Wellness and Nutrition. Thanks for listening, and stay focused on living your strongest, healthiest life possible.